I get paid a lot of money to scare the piss out of people. Before you go judging me, understand that the sort of folk who hire me are the sort of folk who would and could hire hitmen instead. So, you see, I am providing a valuable service for both the client and the target. I mean, the target at least gets to live. Sure, he may have horrible nightmares the rest of his life and never get a good night's sleep again until his hourglass runs out, but at least he'll be alive. I make sure of it. Twice now, I've had to talk targets down from the old suicide ledge, explaining that it was all a trick and breaking my process down for them until they believed me. Another time, I had to intervene and stop some dude from shooting his 80-year-old mother in the head. Everything turned out fine for them, even if I had to refund the client's money those 3 times. Short of death though, I offer all tiers of service, up to and including driving the target to check herself in at the psychiatric ward. If a client is only a little motivated, I might make a few creepy phone calls and leave it at that. More than a little motivated, I might make it seem like the zombie apocalypse is happening for a few days and then drop it and let the target catch on that it's not real. Or I might do some light stalking, and if the client is really motivated and flush with cash, I might settle in for a month-long haunting that the target is sure never to forget. It's not that I like frightening people per se, it's just that I'm really good at it, and I take pride in craftsmanship. That, and the money is good. The money is ridiculous, and that's good because, you see, this time I got in a bit over my head, and now I've got to skip town for a bit and lay low. Got to lay low for a long time now, I think. It started off normal enough. I got a message in my encrypted Dropbox from somebody requesting my services. The only questions I ever ask are, who, where, and how bad do you want to get him? Then we work out a contract and take it from there. Okay, so that's what I asked, and this is what I got. Cal Jenkins, this son of a bitch stole my business and my wife. I want you to crush his soul to dust. Okay, I thought, sounds like a 6-figure job. I wrote back, for $200,000 I'll make him cry for his mama and keep the lights on for the rest of his life. We struck up a deal and then the client wrote another message. One more thing, Cal does not scare easily. I've never seen him flinch, not even when I was holding a gun to his head. I wrote back, Cal hasn't met me yet. The client responded, good luck. I waited for the money to land in my account, then got to work. I staked out Cal's place, learned his schedule, all that. His house was in the suburbs, he lived alone, and he had a basement. Great, that was all I needed to try out the top-tier version of the emergency alert. Here was the plan: send out the text to his phone with the emergency alert, instructing him to go down to the basement if he had one, and not come out until he received word that it was safe. Bring enough supplies to last as long as you can. Set up the signal jammer so that he can't use his phone, cut the power to his house, then wait for him to head down to the basement. Eventually, he will get curious and venture back up to the main house, look out the window. When he does that, he's not actually going to be looking out the window at the outside world, but at some screens I had made up which depict his neighborhood under a dark cloud, completely still and motionless. I made one up for night and one for day and plan on setting these up when he first heads down to the basement. Turn off the jammer just long enough to periodically send out increasingly scary alerts. Start with banging on the door and all that. Start with the creeping around his house, opening and closing things just loud enough for him to question if he actually heard something. Of course, I will be monitoring him this entire time through my surveillance equipment that I've set up around his house. If he opens the front door, even after seeing that somebody or something is rattling the doorknob, then the first thing he'll see is me in my scary alien outfit. If I get tired of waiting for him to open the door, and if the neighborhood is quiet enough when he makes one of his window checks, then I'll take down the screen temporarily and the scary alien will be peering in through the window at him. This whole time, I'll be camped out in his front yard with my equipment out in the open, and if some nosy neighbor or friend comes over, I'll hand them my business card that says I'm a movie producer and tell them I'm shooting a movie there for a while. Sorry, can't say anymore. And there's more, of course. Tons more scares plus methods of dealing with family and business associates who are starting to wonder where he is. But I'm not going to give away all of my trade secrets just yet. Anyway, so I got all of this shit together over the course of a week, and then I was ready. I was sitting in my car early in the morning, watching my monitors. He got up, did his business in the bathroom and all that, and made it to the kitchen. I let him have a couple cups of coffee, I wanted him fully alert, and then sent out the message to his phone. Emergency alert. Residents must seek underground shelter immediately. If you have a basement, go there immediately with enough provisions to last several days. Do not venture outside until authorization has been granted. Stay tuned for further developments. The son of a bitch looked at his phone, dropped it on the table, yawned, had one more cup of coffee, then headed outside for a leisurely stroll. I watched from my car in disbelief. It was the first time the emergency alert hadn't worked. Hell, it was the first time any of my deluxe packages had failed. He walked right by my car as I pretended to look at my phone, and I cursed him under my breath. I decided to use a signature classic. I waited until it was fairly quiet around the neighborhood, and I was sure that Cal was busy in the back of the house. Then I put on my bright yellow vest with city worker written across the back and got out of my car. I took 2 shovels from the trunk, walked over to the sidewalk, and used the shovels to pry open the sewer manhole cover. I climbed down the ladder and studied the pipes. There were 3 of them, one from the street line above, one going down to the street below, and one coming from Cal's house. I stuffed a bunch of rags into the street line going downhill. Then I climbed out. A woman jogged by and I gave her a nod. "Evening, ma'am," I said. She nodded back, then I went to the trunk again and began hauling out buckets of pig blood. I dumped bucket after bucket of blood down there. The blood couldn't drain down the street, and since the pitch up the street was steep, it only had one place to go, Cal's house. The next time that asshole flushed his toilet or turned on the tap, pig's blood would bubble up out of the drains. I'd let this go on until he called a plumber or something, and then I'd use my hook pole to fish the wad of rags out of the pipe, and everything would drain on down the sewer system. When he arrived and checked everything out, the plumber wouldn't be able to find anything wrong, and Cal would start to feel the fear. I headed back to the car and watched my monitors. Cal was doing the dishes. Great. I switched cameras and watched as pig blood started to bubble up into the bathtub. Then Cal started cooking. I waited and waited, and then he put something in the oven and headed to the bathroom. Finally, he walked in, took a piss, looked over at the bathtub full of blood, then walked out without flushing. He looked really calm, god damn it. Cal went to his garage, looked around through some bins, and pulled out a spool of electrical wire. He grabbed a pry bar, opened the garage door, and walked down his driveway at a leisurely pace towards the manhole cover. He pried it up and off, then began unspooling the electrical wire into the manhole. After a minute, he brought it back out, with the wad of rags stuck to the tip. He flung the rags to the ground, kicked the cover back on, and then walked back into his house. What the fuck? I was starting to get pissed off, and so decided to go old school on this asshole. The next day while he was out, I entered his house and went to work. I took a hammer and banged on all the hinges until every door opened with a loud creak. I pried up the stair tread so that each one of those creaked too. I opened up his kitchen cabinets and switched everything around. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to throw him off. Just that fleeting moment of, something's wrong here. Then I added a touch of modern technology. I rolled out a transparent video screen on top of the bathroom mirror. I unscrewed the bathroom vanity cabinet, pulled it away from the wall a bit, hid all of the wires and whatnot back there, then screwed it back to the wall. Whenever I wanted, I could push a button, and a pale 12-year-old girl with wet hair would appear there in the mirror for 2 seconds. Then I added the coup de grace. I went out to my car, pulled a big sack out of the trunk and dragged it into Cal's house. I put on some rubber gloves and opened up the sack. It was full of dead birds. I walked around the house, placing the birds in various subtle places. My GPS tracker alerted me that Cal was close to home, so I went down to my hiding spot in the basement and turned on my mobile monitor. I watched on the screen as Cal entered the house, went into the kitchen, and made himself a snack. Again, I had moved everything around in there, but he didn't even notice. He was even looking at his damn phone, reaching into cabinets, and just pulling everything out, like he knew just where it was. He took his snack to the living room couch and sat down. He immediately stood up, lifted the cushion, picked up the dead bird that was under it, and carried it by its tail to the kitchen trash can. Just cool as a cucumber, like there was nothing weird about a goddamn dead bird under your couch cushion. He finished up his snack and then went into the bathroom and started shaving. When he was about halfway done, I pushed the button and the terrifying girl appeared in the mirror as though she were standing right behind him. He took his washcloth, wiped at the mirror, and went on shaving. I stayed crouched in the basement and watched, getting more and more pissed as he went about his day, occasionally finding a dead bird here and there and just picking it up and tossing it in the trash. What is this guy's deal? I wondered. Finally, the day was over and I watched as he crawled into bed and went to sleep. At last, a ghost in the house never failed to scare the shit out of people, often literally. I crept out of the basement and up the creaky stairs slowly. I watched in the monitor as he stirred, and I smiled in the darkness. I was finally going to get him. I walked down the hall to his bedroom. The door was standing open. I slowly closed it, and it groaned out a glorious creak. Then I slammed it the rest of the way shut. In the monitor, I saw Cal bolt up in bed. He reached over to his nightstand. Good, I thought. He's going for a gun or something. He picked up some earplugs, stuck them in his ears, and then went back to sleep. I needed to regroup. I wasn't giving up, not by a long shot, but I needed to think long and hard about things and get some rest. I had barely slept since I started the Cal Jenkins project. It took a lot of effort to set up even one premium scare package, and by then I had set up 7, all of them utter failures. I sat in my car and watched as my last effort went into effect. Cal opened the door to his woodshed, and a booby-trapped axe swung down from the ceiling, carefully calibrated to miss his head by 1 inch. As it did so, he didn't flinch. Then he turned, pulled the axe from where it was stuck in the door frame, and began splitting firewood with it. I drove off to the airport cussing like mad and just barely caught my flight home. I opened the door to my house and heard my wife screaming from upstairs. I dropped my bag and ran up the stairs. The door to my 5-year-old son's room opened, and he stepped out in front of me frowning. "Is Mom okay? What's wrong?" I cried. "We don't want you here anymore, Dad," said my son. I shook my head and ran past the little brat to my bedroom door where the screams were coming from. I swung it open and watched in total shock as some guy fucked my wife. He was really going to town on her. She was screaming in delight. After a few seconds, blinding rage overtook the shock. "Get out of here," said my wife, peeking around the man on top of her and noticing me. Then the man, still banging away, slowly turned his head to look at me. It was Cal fucking Jenkins. He gave me a big smile. I fell back into the hallway, my head spinning, a dozen thoughts fighting for control over the mounting terror. Here's the one that won. I left directly from his house, got straight on the plane. The flight was non-stop, drove straight home. How did he get here before me? A close second was, how does Cal Jenkins know my wife? They live on opposite sides of the country, and I'd never heard of him until my client contacted me. I slumped against a wall and fell to my ass. My son stepped around me and closed the door to my room, where Cal and my wife continued fucking vigorously. "We don't want you here anymore," my son said again. I stood up with a light head and walked slowly back to the stairs. I took them slowly and carefully, holding on to the handrail like my life depended on it. I opened the front door and got in my car and just started driving. I know I shouldn't have, but I was sort of in a state of dumb shock, on autopilot. I drove straight through a stop sign and woke up in the hospital. I found out that my insurance had been declined. Then I found out that my main bank account was gone. My investments, poof, gone, liquidated and sold off. Luckily I have a few nest eggs stashed here and there, but still, this happened about 2 months ago and I've been moving around ever since. I mean, moving. A different burner phone every day, a different country every week. None of it helps. I keep getting the messages. Pictures of my wife and son at first, smiling happily. A picture of my Benz back home, lit up in flames. And then last week I started to get the pictures of me sleeping in my hotel room. There's no possible way that Cal could have tracked me down. There's no logical way. I use my emergency package and have used 12 different identities along with my failsafe travel protocol. There's just no way. So I'm going to lay low for a while now. I've been thinking it over and I've finally come up with a temporary plan. I mean, somebody is taking pictures of me while I sleep, right? And I've asked every time at the hotel front desk if I can watch the security footage so I can, at least see if it's Cal or somebody else doing it and know what to be on the lookout for, but they never let me look at the footage. I've been thinking about it, if I had people guarding my room 24/7, then we'd know it for sure. We'd catch them in the act. We'd nail that son of a bitch to the wall. So I'm thinking, how can I get guards like that? And I think, prison. No, fuck that. Then I think back to that one target, the one I dropped off at the psychiatric ward. She had seemed so at peace then, and then I know what I have to do. Just for a little while, I just have to regroup and come up with a plan. Then I will scare them. I'll scare the piss out of them all. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacy, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.